What are my 3 least favorite classic Mercedes to work on? Trying to bait you guys with some negative content here, but I'm going to have to be pretty honest in this video, and I don't always like being honest, but
you don't like always being honest?
No, in this case I don't, because it could come back to haunt me later. So there are 2 models in here that you wouldn't expect, and then there's one here that you probably would, and then there's one that I'm throwing in at the end as a bonus chassis. So we're going to start with the one that you guys probably might not be too surprised about. Now, the first model platform I'm going to talk about are the Finn cars, W110, 111, 112. Now, it's not because I don't like the Finn cars. I actually own a W112. And I'm not talking about the coupes and cabriolets, the 111 and 112 coupe and cabriolet. I'm specifically talking about 110, 111, and 112 sedans. Now, Pierre, why on earth are you saying you don't like working on the most iconic Mercedes from the 60s? Well, we're going to talk about that a little bit. And so part of the problem with servicing these cars is because they cost as much as a coupe or a cabriolet or a Pagoda to service, because all the parts are the same. But people often show up with a 111 sedan or 110, and you know, a lot of the time they acquire, I've noticed that these are often impulse buys. So they're not well researched. They're not really well understood by the people who own them. They're not really checked out like they should be. People see it and they're like, oh, it has tail fins. How bad could this be? It's so cute. And the truth is, if you get into a Finn car, unless you really bought a car that has been exhaustively vetted by somebody who knows what they're doing, like Jamie Kopczynski, or I don't know, I know some other people too that are good at this stuff, but you know, I always talk to Jamie about these things. If you don't find one that's been extremely well vetted, then it could be a real disaster. And that's because on these cars, every rubber part is bad. Every engine mount, every subframe mount, every flex disc, every transmission mount, every shifter bushing, every rear axle boot, every rear control arm, every fuel hose, every door seal, every windshield seal, every heater lever O-ring. It's all bad. All of it. It's all worn out. It's from the 1960s. There's no rubber that lasts 50 years unless you put the car indoors in climate-controlled storage for its entire life. It's going to happen. Now, there's a big problem, though, when I try to explain this to the customers. Their dreams of enjoying this cute little car get shattered. And I don't really like doing that. I want people to enjoy their cars, but I also have to make a living fixing them, and I have to pay the Mercedes dealership for the parts I buy from them. And so, you know, there's this whole thing you have to do, this whole preparation you have to do before you tell somebody, hey, the Finn car you bought may not be such a great decision. So about 60% of the people who approach me with these cars end up, after I discuss what it's going to cost, they end up backing out, probably taking their car to another shop, which is fine. Probably, I don't know, probably selling the car. Some of them have sold the car. Some of them just get angry at me and then proceed with the work and then get angry with me and we're done, which I really try to avoid, but some things are unavoidable. Now we're going to go to the next model. The next model that I don't always enjoy working on are 113s. Now, why is that? Well, here's the thing about the 113. People believe that my shop is like the best shop in the world, and I'm sorry, but that's not true. you know, we're just a pretty average shop. It's just there are so many shops that are below average or completely unwilling to even try that it makes us look better than we are. And if this comes back to bite me later, I don't really care. We're average, you know, and I wake up every day and I'm like, if I can maintain average, that's pretty good, because it's a lot of work to maintain average. But people think that they're going to send us a 113 and they're going to get something phenomenal back. And the truth is that most shops that restore 113s value cosmetic presentation over mechanical function. And I care more about two things, really. I care about mechanical function, but I also care about authenticity. And so authenticity means, does the car have the right screws holding the relay on? Does it have the right cotter pin clamps if it's a 68 280 SL? Does it have the correct Mercedes 12.5 millimeter hose on the cooling system going to the injection pump thermostat? Does it have either Mercedes or Aute brake lines on it? Are the bolts holding the hood on Camax or Verbus bolts, or are they just bolts you bought from Ace Hardware? Is the car painted the correct color? Does it have a genuine Mercedes firewall pad? Well, here's the thing, because so many 113 owners care about cosmetic presentation over the car's form and function, I think they often get soured by our work when they see that the final product is, you know, not that much different cosmetically than what they started with. And because the majority of 113 owners don't drive their cars so much, they seem to be of the opinion that the car should look pretty in their garage and serve their visual preferences, you know, their aesthetic preferences, and they kind of forget about all the work that has to be done on the mechanical side. So the thing is, generating the correct combination of cosmetic presentation and mechanical function often exceeds the value of the car. It's easily like a six-figure job to make a Pagoda look good, run good, and get all the details right. And I have some Pagoda customers that value the mechanical stuff, and I appreciate all you guys, you know, whether you own a 250 SL and you really love the fact that it was a family car, it's a really, you know, really well-documented car, whether you own a 280 SL that you just love driving. There are people out there that like that, but by and large, if you look at the people that really attract attention in the Pagoda market, like Unique Cars of Palm Beach or Bud's Bins, these guys produce some very eye-catching work. And I just can't compete with that. And people show up thinking that I can, and I can't, and I don't. And I don't think I'm going to be able to, you know. In an era where getting a car painted is like pulling teeth. It's just hard work. Now, we're going to go into the bonus car, and then we're going to go into the last car. So the bonus car, early 107, so 1972 to, let's say, 76, 77 450 SLs. By 1978, I think that a lot of the bugs were out of the 450 SL. It became a pretty good car. I still prefer a 380, but if you give me a 77 and later 450, I can make it into a pretty good car for you that'll do everything it's supposed to do really nicely. But when you get to these old cars, like these 76 and earlier 107s, I find that the cars have often been abused because the people who bought those cars discovered the 380 or 560, and they often did not keep their early 450, and the next person ran it into the ground. And the person after that decided to save it because it was a convertible, but didn't do much else. They just did oil changes and hoped the timing chain didn't blow up. And so, not like if somebody brings me an early 107, I'll do whatever I have to do on it, but there has to be an appropriate budget. The budget has to be you know, clear from the beginning, and even the unclear parts have to be clear, like, hey, we're not really sure, you know, how many hours it's going to take to get this D-Jetronic system to work. That's why I advise people don't buy early 107s. If you want a pretty looking Euro car, buy a Euro car. Don't buy a 72 or 73 450 unless that's what you really want. Unless you want that car. Now, there are some circumstances where you should buy that car. Like if you're in California where they have emissions regulations on Euro cars, go buy an early 450 so you don't have to take your car to the state emissions testing center. So there are some scenarios where this makes sense. But by and large, you should always buy the newest 107 you can afford. So let's get into the last car, because I know you've been waiting for this. The last car. W128 300 SL. But why, Pierre? Why would you say that? Oh, the 300 SL is so special. Oh, it's every kid's dream to ride in a 300 SL. Yeah, I know. But there's another perspective here. So I have some 300 SL customers that I really like, that I've had a great relationship with. There are only a handful of them. There are not many. I can count them on one hand. And the reason that I can only count them on one hand is because I don't go out soliciting 300 SL clients. I don't do that because if you think the expectations associated with the Pagoda are high, the expectations associated with the 300 SL are even higher. And 300 SLs, because of their financial value, are often bought as assets. They're often bought and held as assets. And so when you're holding a car as an asset, suddenly the repair and service budget becomes a big deal, especially if the car is just sitting there and appreciating in value. The whole thing about 300 SLs is you have to have a lot of liability. A lot of liability insurance. You have to have a plan when the car shows up. You have to start on it immediately. Everything else has to stop. You have to prioritize the needs of that car to the point where you kind of let everything else in your shop go, because there's so much pressure not to keep, whether it's from your insurer, from the car's owner, to keep the car there for as little time as possible. And the other thing, too, is that a lot of 300 SL owners have inherited these cars from their parents, so they don't have the budget their parents did to maintain these things. So while, you know, your grandfather could have spent $18,000 getting his engine rebuilt at the local Mercedes dealership in 1990, you know, today that same kind of work is like a $65,000 job, because you have all this ancillary stuff because of the age of the car that has gone wrong. Like you might have to get a replacement cylinder head if the cylinder head is rotted away. You might have to get the injection pump redone. You might have to get, you know, a new water pump, which is approximately $1,100. There's just a lot of stuff that goes into fixing a 300 SL Gullwing or Roadster. And oftentimes, again, there's so many people in that space. Like if you want to get a 300 SL restored, there's no secret. All you have to do is write a check to people like Paul Russell or Silver Star in North Carolina, or my buddy Robert Webster. Like, they'll all do a fantastic job on these cars. You know, Mercedes Classic Center will do a fantastic job on these cars. Steve Marks, who's out in California, he'll do a fantastic job on these cars too. Everybody that is in the 300 SL space, HK Engineering, doesn't matter. They all know what they're doing, you know. So why compete with them? I find that what I like doing is working on cars that nobody cares about, like 123, 124, 116, 201, etc. You know, because there are some people that do value these cars. So, hope you guys enjoy this video. I'll send you more great videos in the future if you subscribe to this channel. And by the way, we're at 50,400 subscribers, so only took 10 years. Thanks, guys. I'll see you in the future.